Sundays have always been sacred to me. It gives me a chance to spend time with my family, with my friends, to focus on my faith. And honestly, We Rest on Sundays is a platform that I've created to help you navigate the complexities of the world. I want to spend time having open, honest dialogue with mentors, friends and family, and individuals that I truly believe are exceptional. We're going to focus on love, career, marriage, parenting, and everything in between. And the primary goal here is for us to become the better versions of ourselves every single day. I want to thank you for tuning in. I'll see you on Sunday. So today I'm going to talk a little bit more about really just early career and how I was able to navigate from graduating from Morehouse and starting my career. I think I'm passionate about really Black people and all people in general being open and honest about just their compensation, especially if you work in corporate America. For me, I think it is the only way for you to really understand, one, what are these companies paying? Two, what's the worth? Three, really what's going to be the value of your time that you're going to allocate to some of these employers that you have an opportunity to work for. So let me back up a little bit, because there's more to my journey that I'd love to just really explain, because I think if younger kids and the younger generation understand that you may come from one hardship, that doesn't mean that you need to necessarily stay there for the rest of your life and or your career. So as I navigated out of high school, I think because really I was alone for a lot of high school, and graduating was a bit of just a grind. My dad was still in prison, my mom was still battling her drug addiction, and my sisters were going away to college at that point. So for me, I really just tried to focus on sports, but my academics suffered. I was worried about really figuring out what was going to be my next meal. How do I make sure that I'm able to still fit in and live a semi-normal, really just childhood during high school. So I didn't graduate high school with the best GPA. I finished high school with a 2.1 GPA, surprisingly. Graduated from Morehouse with 3.43 GPA. And I finished graduate school with a 3.97 GPA. So for me, what that really taught me, I think, about myself is that my environment really, really mattered, and the who and the how I was around also mattered. So as my life progressively got better, I think the more discipline I was able to really focus on when it came to my academics, when it came to my career. As I mentioned before, graduating from Morehouse, especially as a finance major, you have guys that either focus on investment banking or guys that lean towards management consulting. My best friend went on to work for Goldman Sachs, started his career in investment banking. And I knew for me, I didn't want to be in New York. I knew that I didn't want to focus on investment banking. Therefore, I landed on management consulting. However, I graduated towards the tail end of the recession, and my initial offer was rescinded. So it was really a tough moment, I think, just in my life. I was getting ready to graduate. This was my last semester of school, and I didn't have a job offer at this time period. And I'm just freaking out, because all of my friends, my peers had these wonderful offers, whether it's starting with JP Morgan, starting with McKinsey, starting with Deloitte, starting with Accenture, you name it. I didn't have one. And I knew I worked really hard in school. Also didn't have any money at this point, because I'm just it's on me. My sisters were working and trying to provide for themselves, and I knew that I just had to make it. Therefore, I knew that I needed a job. Was living with my sister and her ex-husband at this time period, and that was fine, but there were definitely seasons during living there where it was just a sacrifice in a continued grind, is what I will say, just because you graduate from Morehouse, you graduate with honors, and you have no job. There are questions that your family are going to really ask you, right? Hey, what's going on? What are you doing? And I started working at DSW part-time, and that was by far the worst job that I've ever had within my entire life. It was extremely humbling. For those of you that shop at stores like DSW, please show love to the clearance section. I had a manager that I worked for who, I don't think he really cared for me. I'm not really sure why, but every single shift that I had, he would send me to that clearance section, which meant every single shoe that was out of line or not, allocated to the appropriate box, I had to spend hours of my time matching shoes in that clearance section. And again, this is with a degree, and it just told me a lot about myself. I knew that I had to stay true to pursuing management consulting because I just felt like it was going to be able to add significant value to my life and my career. I interviewed like crazy, applied like crazy, That entire summer post-graduation, I eventually got an offer right around August of the summer that I finished Morehouse to start my career working for Accenture, which is a management consulting firm up in Chicago. The however, though, is that they weren't allowing their new college graduate hires to start until Q1 of the following year. So I was excited, but then I also was just like, well, what does this mean? You know, I have this job offer come August, and now I have to sit until January, February before I can even relocate, start my job, get a check, earn any real money. And that initial offer was actually for $58,500. I will never forget it because to me, it was a defining moment of my life. It was it was the most amount of money that my family at that time period had ever seen. And by family, I mean my mother's household. During my upbringing, my mom never cleared more than $20,000 in a single year. So for me, getting an offer of $58,000, $500, it was monumental. And I knew, that this is going to be the beginning of my journey and it would allow me to really launch in the direction that I wanted to launch in. But I had, another 4 or 5 months of staying at my sister's house and her ex-husband's house, potentially working at DSW, potentially leaning on my girlfriend at the time, who was my wife, India, really to just help step in and pay for some dates, go to the movies, etc. Even that was humbling because, you pride yourself on being this Morehouse man and, you graduated with honors and now you're at a point where you're ready to launch your career and you don't have any money to provide for the woman that you were dating. So again, I think one, focusing on management consulting, focusing on my career, landing that job offer really, really helped me. But I still needed that time period of working and figuring out how am I going to make it to Chicago. Some months had passed, and at this point, Accenture did give me a sign-on offer, and that sign-on bonus and relocation bonus was right around $10,000. But that $10,000 is obviously taxed, and it comes to you after your first check. So I'm like, how am I supposed to get from Atlanta, move up to Chicago, buy furniture, get an apartment, pay a security deposit? How are these things going to happen? And I remember just talking to my family. I'm like, how do we scrape this together for me to get there? A couple of grand is all I really need. And my mom, I can't remember, but she had some stocks from a previous employer that she had never done anything with. I don't know whether or not she knew what to do with them, or maybe she was just waiting for a rainy day, but she gave me these stocks and really was just like, hey, do what you need to do. And it ended up being one of the biggest blessings at that time period that I, can remember. And it set me on my way. I instantly figured out how do I sell these stocks. So I had to liquidate the stocks. It gave me a couple grand, and all of that money went to my moving expenses. My oldest sister, Kinky, had a U-Haul, full of old apartment furniture because she had left Wisconsin, and she's like, hey, you can have that. So if you figure out how to get it from Wisconsin to Chicago, it's yours. So I literally called my 2 older cousins and I was like, hey, I need y'all to help me move this stuff from a Kinky's U-Haul unit into a U-Haul truck and then drive it to Chicago with me. So I flew up to Wisconsin, got the U-Haul, got my 2 cousins. We loaded that U-Haul up and we drove to Chicago and paid my security deposit, moved into my apartment, and it was amazing. It was a beautiful apartment. It was right in on the south side of really downtown Chicago. They call it the South Loop. And this was my first I made it moment is what I will say. But the I made it moment didn't last for that long because I moved into an apartment where the rent was $1,450 a month, and little did I know how heavy taxes would hit me that first year. So after, Social Security and federal taxes, state taxes are all taken out, one entire check was dedicated to my rent. I mean, my rent was literally $1,450. I was netting around $1,500 and some change every 2 weeks. So my one full check went to my rent. Then my second check, part of it went to the additional bills, right? Like your electricity, your water, you name it. So it left me with maybe $1,000 a month to for groceries and travel and fun or whatever it may have been, but it was no real money. And I think for me, that set me on my path of really figuring out, okay, where do you want to be and by when from a financial standpoint? And what that really looked like for me is just sitting down and observing those individuals that I feel like mentors of mine and senior leaders in these organizations and businesses where I've worked, and asking them the tough questions, right? Like questions that people really would typically say are taboo. I am okay if I have a meaningful relationship with you with asking and opening the door revolving around salary. It shouldn't feel uncomfortable. Sometimes it can feel uncomfortable for other people, but it's not for me to, I'm not trying to be nosy. I'm not trying to understand what you were spending your money on. I am really trying to figure out what are the targets that I want to set for my own life. And that has been the only thing that I feel like has really helped me navigate the compensation area of working for some of these companies. So I knew by the age of 25, I wanted to make six figures. It was this big mark of mine. I'm like, look, I can do it. There's money in management consulting. I can figure this thing out. And I spoke it out loud. I talked to India about it. I was like, look, I plan on making, $100,000 by the time I'm 25. That was the goal. We communicated about it. She was in dental school. I mean, whether or not she really cared, she wasn't putting pressure on me to do it. I think I was definitely putting pressure on myself. And, that meant just performing exceptionally well, on every single client that I was aligned to while working at Accenture, figuring out, okay, if my cap is going to be $80,000 at Accenture by the time I make consultant, then when do I need to pivot out of this company and make a transition to the next company? So for me, I eventually made a jump out to Deloitte. Started interviewing for Deloitte, I'll say 3 months before my 25th birthday. And they were interviewing me for a while and courting me. I was flying back and forth to have final rounds with them. And I landed that job, it was a week or two after my 26th birthday. And that offer was finally for, it was like $115,000, I think was the base salary for that. And all in, I think it was gonna get me right around like 147 or 150. And again, this was just a huge milestone marker for me because I am now looking at the 20K that my family survived off of, in childhood, and now being at a point where I'm almost 6x of what that amount was, right? And that's with no kids. I wasn't married at the time period. So with that came a lot of responsibility and me to really figure out, okay, like I can do this. I think that was the first mark of me really believing that, like, I don't know, I don't want this to sound, ignorant or uninformed, but it was a good reminder to me that I really could figure out whatever it is that I felt like I needed to do, and I could make as much money as I felt like I wanted to make if I just worked hard, put my head down, and like built strong and meaningful relationships in these companies, and then honestly continued with mentors as well, and leaning into the difficult conversations or areas that I was struggling with when it came to work. So Deloitte got me there, and it was amazing. I think for me, again, taxes still hit, taxes never go away. So that check looked and felt a lot different, but what it allowed, I think, my girlfriend, now wife and I, it gave us a little bit more of a cushion to be able to maybe go on an international trip or two while she still was in dental school, not bringing in any money. It allowed me to own more of, just like greater expenses that we may have had during that time period of life. When it came to planning for a wedding, it allowed me to save for the ring that I felt like she deserved. It allowed me to handle my bills more comfortably. And even with that, I was more disciplined because I moved out of Chicago and I moved to Atlanta. Shout out to my line brother, Mandela. Because, we had talked very early about him buying a house, and I was like, hey man, I'm gonna come back to Atlanta and I wanna just rent a room from you. India's gonna be in dental school, so I'm probably gonna be going down there on the weekends. I just need a place to lay my head for a day or two during the week, since I'm gonna still be traveling when it comes to management consulting and the client work. And he did. He bought a house, he rented the room, and if I misquote it, he rented a room to me for $600 a month. And I mean, you can't live anywhere in Metro Atlanta for $600 a month. Was the house perfect? No. Were there opportunities? Sure. But it was right in the heart of the city. We could get everywhere we needed to be. It was convenient to my job. convenient to get on the highway to make it down to Augusta to visit India as well. So it was a blessing because I was able to pay $600 every single month for 2 years and then also save aggressively. I was just saving as much as possible because I knew that, one, I wanted to buy this ring. Two, we would have a wedding to pay for. Three, we would have a honeymoon to pay for as well. And India still was going to be in dental school as time went on. And for me, the next major milestone coming from that really was when I decided to pivot into banking, not investment banking, but I left Deloitte because I was tired of really living out of a suitcase and traveling every single week. My last client site, I was flying from Augusta, Georgia to Charlotte to San Jose, California on Sundays. Then I would take a red eye from San Jose, California to Charlotte. Red eye being flight taking off 11, 12 o'clock, landing in Charlotte like 4:35 a.m. And then I'd take a jumper flight from Charlotte to Augusta to hang out with India for about 36 hours every single weekend. And I did that for a little bit over a year and it was killing me. I hated the job. I hated the client. I hated the flight. I started to hate California and I was like, something has to give. And I remember talking to India because I had this fear, right? Like I was making this money and it felt good. And, again, she was in school and I was like, hey, I'm really unhappy. And I can feel it. I can sense it internally. And like something has to give. And she literally looked at me and she was like, well, quit. And I was like, very surprised. I think for me, I'm like, how many women in that situation are going to tell you that you can quit when you're really the one that's bringing in the money? And like, she didn't have any doubt at all. I think in that moment, she just was like, look, you'll figure it out. You're smart. You'll get another job. And I was like, yeah, but this is my first time making six figures. Am I really just going to walk away from this? Like, what does this really look like? I had that fear of potentially going back to poverty, being poor again, going without. And, maybe a little bit is like silly to have that thought process. But I think the however is like, even at this point in my life, I still continue to always have that slight fear internally that I'm working through, navigating, thinking through. Because if there's any fear that I have at all, it just revolves around, a fear of going without or being poor again. But I will say is that the words of conviction and like her confidence in my skills and my ability at that time period really just put a battery in my back and helped me really understand that I can figure this thing out. Flew out to California that week and literally like started reaching out to organizations. A recruiter from SunTrust, now Truist Bank, ended up reaching out to me and she's just like, hey, would love to talk to you about this opportunity. Think your skill set and your management consultant background would really, really fit what this opportunity would be. And it was still like a strategy consultant role where they wanted me to come in and really create a graduate and an undergraduate program of like analysts, interns, and then full-time staff will come in and go through each functional area of that business during these rotations. So I was like, this is interesting. Let me figure out what this looks like. Interviewed, talked to her, and the entire time I'm like, man, they're not gonna be able to pay me what I'm making at Deloitte. What is this really gonna look like? And I interviewed maybe about 2 months there, landed the job, and it was more. It was at that time period, the base was about 175 base with the opportunity of like 25K end of the year bonus. That got me to 200 at that point. And don't quote me, I think I was maybe 27, 28. And yet again, another milestone marker for me where I'm like, I am not 30 yet. I have a chance to bring home roughly 200 grand. I thought I was gonna have to stay in management consulting forever to make this type of money. And it showed me like, okay, like that's not true, right? Like this case study that I always had of like needing to focus on management consulting, needed to stay here and stay put with this organization to continue to make this money. Like there are other organizations and entities, again, if you put yourself out there, you apply, you do good work, and you have individuals that can vouch for the work that you do, really there's more out there to achieve. So I stepped into SunTrust, loved it, thought I was gonna be there for a while. However, because of my strategy M&A background, I worked on an M&A deal between SunTrust and BB&T for them to merge to transition into being Truist Bank. So it gave me a peek behind the curtain of really a lot of the roles at this time period, senior level roles, were going to be shifting to the Carolinas. And I knew that I wanted to start a family in Atlanta. My wife is from here, and we had talked about having kids in Atlanta, raising kids in Metro Atlanta, and the Carolinas just was not in, I think the journey for me personally. Thought about it, prayed about it. A recruiter from Chick-fil-A ended up reaching out to me, and Chick-fil-A had always been the place that I felt like I wanted to work. In a piece of my story that I missed out on, I was probably about 2 or 3 years into my time frame working and launching my career at Accenture, and I had started to interview to become a business consultant at Chick-fil-A corporate, and they interviewed me for almost a year. It was literally 11 months. I was coming in, meeting people. I mean, I probably had 20, 30 discussions, and I remember them inviting me to the final interview and me calling India. She was in Augusta, and I was like, hey, I think I'm gonna get this offer. I was so excited. I'm like, it's rare that organizations to this scale call and invite you for a final round interview to tell you no. However, that's exactly what they did. I came into this final round interview, I met with somebody, and a man that looked just like me. It was a black man, Andre Kennenbrud. He's great, close relationship with him to this day, but essentially, he told me that it was a no, not right now. Not a no forever, but a no, not right now. And if I'm being entirely transparent with you, I didn't understand it during this time period. I was young in my career and super frustrated. I handled it with grace and professionalism, but I would be lying to you to say that leaving that office, I didn't feel defeated. I was devastated. I just was like, I know that I'm supposed to be there. This company aligns to my personal values. It's a faith-based organization. And like they're an organization that's really trying to serve. I believe that I'm a servant at heart. I believe that my purpose on earth is to help other people navigate the complexities of the world. And I believe that a large part of the Chick-fil-A mission and purpose also correlates to that. So I'm like, I'm supposed to be there. It set me in this path of like questioning God for a second and like why. Fast forwarding back to the current state of my interview process during that time period with Chick-fil-A. I'm like, all right, God, like if this is where you want me to be now, almost 7, 8 years later, great, just show me the path. And the team that was recruiting me was a talent consulting team in the people department, which is really HR. And I'm like, I don't think I want to be necessarily in that department for the rest of my career. I think I really want to be in the field as a business consultant, but I'm like, whatever, Ben, just get in, right? Just do what you need to do to land this job. Interviewed for that job for about 7.5 months, and it was intense. I mean, I remember one of my final interviews, I had to present to a team of like 20 people for like an hour on a case study and more about my family and all of these things, but I landed that job, and I don't remember that base, but in total comp, they got me to right around 260. And, I've been working for this organization for 6 years now. And what I will say is like last year I was able to make over 400 grand. And for me, I am able to continue to, I think, achieve these milestones by one, serving first and foremost, two, making it about the work, meaning I'm always coming in prepared. I'm always making sure that I am handling myself and carrying myself with the highest level of professionalism. And I'm leaning and leading into my relationships as well. And what I mean by that is like, I haven't been able to navigate and make multiple hundreds of $1,000s a year based on, oh, I'm just so smart, right? Like, no, I don't feel like that at all. I feel like I'm really good at relationships. I feel like I'm really good at asking clarifying questions. And I feel like I'm really good at work as well. And for me, I am constantly seeking out mentors, constantly asking mentors, constantly benchmarking my salary, my income against my peers. Because I think for me and for all of us, it's like that's what helps you understand the path, what the opportunities are, and like what's really out there for you to go and achieve, right? Like otherwise we're just shooting in the dark or we're just taking what the companies will give us. If I can see and understand that, hey, my friend right here that has a very similar skill set to me, working at a very similar organization, is able to then go and make $325,000, okay, great, then maybe that should be my target as well if I think truly that my skills are just as good as his or her skills. So I think communicating about it and really, really understanding, what's out there, what the ranges are for certain jobs, right? And then going after those jobs. And it doesn't only have to be about money, because for me, I'm at the point now where, what I'll say is, like, I feel like after 300,000, life doesn't and or hasn't significantly changed. Like, we still have significant student loans that we have to pay on religiously every single month. Life, creep can happen. Our daughter is in private school because we feel like we personally aren't zoned to the best schools right now. That's an expense. And, there are a lot of things that still come up. So my wife and I try to be very disciplined with the income that we were able to bring in. We communicate about it. We just had a financial check-in. She and I, as of yesterday, for a little bit over an hour. We try to do it pretty religiously every single month. But I also have financial check-ins with some of my closest peers and my friends whose careers I admire, and my mentors who have already led in careers that I desire to be. And I think once people understand and know your heart, they won't feel like you are attacking the question and the conversation in a way that feels intrusive. Because there's a way to do it and handle it with grace, where you're just being inquisitive so you can really apply that learned knowledge and that understanding to your own career journey, your own life, and really your own personal goals. So I'll wrap it with saying I hope that this is helpful, and not, I don't want it to come off as being tone deaf, but I really want it to come off in a light that is helpful and encouraging to those of you, especially if you're younger, early in your career, not even younger, early in your career, just in general, navigating corporate America, navigating these conversations of, how do I go and figure out what my worth is? Like, talk to your friends, talk to your peers, talk to those that are doing the jobs that you desire to have, and then really figure out what is it that you believe that you can achieve.